Yeah.
And you weren't really sparring. You were fighting. We were fighting all the time. And just guys getting dropped all the time. And that was just the kind of gym that I was in.
There's no coming back from that. The people who, like, dissipate their teeth through drug usage, you don't get, like, a second set.
Didn't look like he got out of first gear. Jake Paul was just on pure survival mode from round 1 right through to round 6. I don't know if he's got a moral victory going 6 rounds. Maybe he has. People might give him credit for going 6 rounds. But he got in there and just survived. He just went in there and ran like a chicken from round 1 right through to round 6 when he got...
Joe Rogan shocked after Jake Paul's injury ends his career, in a moment that stunned the combat sports world and sent shockwaves through podcasts, locker rooms, and social media feeds alike. Joe Rogan reportedly reacted with visible disbelief and raw honesty as news broke that a devastating injury had effectively brought Jake Paul's controversial boxing career to an abrupt and sobering end, marking a dramatic conclusion to one of the most polarizing chapters in modern fight history. And
think you can't do things, you don't know what the you're doing in life. It's like literally everything is the quality of your ability to
according to those close to the situation, the injury was not a minor setback or a routine wear and tear issue, but a severe, career-altering condition that raised immediate red flags among doctors, trainers, and commissions, forcing a hard conversation that no fighter ever wants to face, especially one whose brand thrived on momentum, bravado, and the promise of what's next. And when Rogan addressed the situation, his tone was markedly different from the usual playful skepticism or sharp.
Look at all them celebrities like dude from the Mighty Ducks, the little boy actor that got strung out on drugs. And all his fronts and all his teeth were missing from being on meth or whatever, you know what I mean, whatever drug of choice he was on. There's no coming back from that. The people who, like, dissipate their teeth through drug usage, you don't get, like, a second set. So, if I'm not mistaken, the dude from Mighty Ducks, somebody, like, he's been clean, and they gave him a makeover, and he has, like, pretty much fake teeth. So, yeah, the teeth are going to be cooked. Now, I agree with the other part that Rogan was saying, but let's keep going.
Yeah, I think he went into that fight knowing that was probably going to happen. Yeah. And ultimately, the big win for him would be that he was even willing to do it and that he could do well for a little bit.
Yeah, and I've already expressed my thoughts on this. I'm not giving no props for a person who says I am a real deal boxer because I went in and get smashed and got my jaw broken, but I lasted longer than Ngannou. But I was crazy enough to try. Because, to be honest, we're way past the honeymoon stage with a person like Jake Paul. You've been in this for long enough to go through fight camps, dedicate your time, effort, energy, money, spar with people. You spar with some quality names because you have resources and money or whatever. So we're well past that to the point where you just get credit for stepping in. You maybe got credit your first fight or whatever, first couple of fights.
Critique he often reserves for celebrity boxing, instead reflecting a sobering respect for the brutal reality of combat sports, as he emphasized that injuries like this are the ultimate reminder that boxing is not a game, not content, and not immune to consequences, no matter how famous or financially secure a fighter may be. And Rogan's shock seemed rooted not only in the suddenness of the announcement but in the magnitude of the shift, because Jake Paul had managed to position himself as a...
What happened was what was always going to happen. You know, a lot of people thought it would only last 1 round, 2 rounds, but you know, you've got to give Jake credit. You know, he went out there and had a solid game plan and was implementing it at times, was landing shots and was avoiding getting hit with the big shots. You know, but there's a reason we have weight categories in boxing, and I'd say he sticks with, you know, the cruiserweight division where the guys are the same size as him, because that, you know, without having the schooling, the many years, I was able to give away 100 pounds in weight because I've been boxing since I was 10. I was an international amateur and world champion at cruiserweight. That's why I was able to do the big jump and use the tactics that he used to win the heavyweight championship. But you know, credit to him, nothing but respect for Jake Paul for putting on such an event and putting himself in harm's way.
I would imagine some people back home for you are going to say, man, AJ should have gotten out of there in 2 rounds.
No, anyone who understands boxing knows it's very difficult to close the range on someone who doesn't want to hold his feet. And is AJ supposed to just run around swinging and missing? No, he's supposed to wait for the right opportunity, which he did. And once the opportunity presented himself, he landed and the fight was over. But yeah, anyone who kind of gives AJ stick because he didn't knock him out in one round doesn't understand boxing.
What level would you say Jake Paul is after that performance?
Pardon?
What level would you say Jake
It's
Paul
hard,
is?
it's hard to tell. It's very, very difficult to see what level he was because he was fighting someone in the top 5 and
Disruptive force who blurred the lines between influencer culture and professional fighting, drawing massive audiences while daring critics to dismiss him, yet this injury instantly stripped away the spectacle and exposed the unforgiving truth that the human body has limits that clout cannot override, and as details emerged, fans learned that the injury was the result of cumulative damage sustained over multiple camps and fights, exacerbated by increasingly intense training, heavier sparring.
Not boxers, like Anderson Silva, Tyron Woodley, none of them are boxers. Nate Robinson, who's a YouTuber. So I guess, over the hill, retired Mike Tyson, who's 60, almost lost his life before the fight and had blood transfusions and was coughing up blood and was transported off of a plane for passing out. And Jake Paul wanted to fight him and still tried to knock him out. A lot of y'all like to say he had mercy on Mike, but I promise you, I watched the fight. Just go back and watch it again. He was trying to knock Mike Tyson out from beginning to end. He could not do it. The reason he couldn't do it is because he refused to get too close to Mike Tyson, because Mike Tyson always would swing back, and he knew he could not take that punch from Mike Tyson. So he hit and he ran. And at the end of the fight, he was not showing mercy on Mike. He was trying to make sure that he doesn't get knocked out or caught with something stupid, because he knows he's about to win. He didn't want to risk it. I'm not going to keep letting y'all run with this narrative that Mike Tyson was following a script with all these fake script posts running around on Facebook, or saying that he had
partners, and the relentless pressure to escalate competition levels to maintain credibility, a trajectory that Rogan has long warned about when discussing fighters who rise too quickly without years of foundational conditioning. And on his platform, Rogan broke down how such injuries don't just end careers physically but mentally, altering reflexes, confidence, and long-term health in ways that no payday can justify, pointing out that even elite champions have been forced into retirement for.
I'm going to break him down, and then I'm going to knock him out. And that's exactly what he did. I thought it'd be all over within 3 rounds. But, when I got in the ring after, because I was shouting, just, anywhere, arms. I got in, he went, what are you rushing me for? And I was like, oh, sorry. So, but like, obviously he knows what he's doing, and actually now quite pleased that we got the rounds, to be honest.
Yeah, I saw you said that. Really random, I was on Twitter and I saw Jake Paul's mum said she wants to get in the ring and punch you. She said she doesn't like the smug look on your face. She is promoting her book, so I'm not sure if she wants, But did you see that? What did you think of that?
No, I was very sad, because I couldn't have been nicer and more respectful of Jake and what he's done. And I think Logan's amazing. I think he's an incredible athlete. And I shook Jake Paul's dad's hand in the ring, And if I would have seen Mum, I would have said, all right. But I think over the years, we've obviously had our beef, and she probably don't like me anyway. And I am probably a little bit smug. I wasn't smug after the fight, because I would have been more smug if it was all over in a round. Yeah. So, no, I give Jake respect. And, sorry, Jake's mum doesn't like me, but if she can send
far less severe issues, and the conversation quickly shifted from mockery and memes to genuine concern as fighters, analysts, and fans alike reflected on how fast the narrative had changed from "what big fight is next" to "will he ever compete again?" And Rogan's reaction resonated because he didn't celebrate the fall, instead stressing that regardless of how one feels about Jake Paul, stepping into a boxing ring carries real risk, and anyone who does it deserves a baseline level of respect for.
Knocked out, whatever, however you want to call it. It wasn't a bad knockout. It wasn't an El Sparko. He wasn't rendered unconscious, but he got done. He got it on the chin. He went over. He didn't beat the count. He was sort of up on his feet. But if I'm honest, the whole fight was terrible, wasn't it? It was just so bad. It was just shit, wasn't it? A proper bad fight for AJ. And let me start with AJ. AJ was following him around the ring a little bit, sort of pouring with the jab, putting the jab on the shoulder of Jake Paul, sort of putting him in the corner and not really pulling the trigger on the right hand. He didn't seem to didn't seem to be motivated to go in there and just smash Jake Paul into oblivion in the first 1 or 2 rounds, which I think he could have done. But he's been out of the ring 15 months, a bit slow on his feet, a bit ring rust maybe, and it was it's hard. When I used to spar novice amateurs, even when I was a world champion pro, if you're not motivated, sometimes you can have a couple of bad rounds and you're sort of looking at your opponent and a jab hits you or right hand hits you. And I think AJ was in a bit of a daze early on, just walking him around, touching the jab on his shoulder, not really pulling the trigger on the right hand. Didn't look like he got out of first gear. Jake Paul was just on pure survival mode from round 1 right through to round 6. I don't know if he's got a moral victory going 6 rounds. Maybe he has. People might give him credit for going 6 rounds. But he got in there and just survived. He just went in there and ran like a chicken from round 1 right through to round 6 when he got splattered. And it's like, it's just, you can't really justify what he's done, because this is supposed to be a professional sanctioned boxing match. And I think it brings the integrity of the sport down when somebody like AJ, who's a 2-time world champion, can't get in there and just completely dismiss somebody like Jake Paul, who I've said for ages can't fight. He's not a professional boxer. It's just AJ following him around, touching him to the shoulder. Round 1 came and went. Round 2 was much of the same, bit slow. I think AJ got caught with an overhand right at one stage, but sometimes when you're out in the rain, you're going to get wet. He was following him around, taking his eye off the ball, probably a bit undermotivated, thinking.
Facing that danger, and as clips of Rogan's comments circulated, the boxing community responded with a rare moment of unity, acknowledging that the injury served as a cautionary tale about the physical toll of combat sports, especially in an era where entertainment incentives can sometimes push fighters toward dangerous decisions. And behind the scenes, reports suggested that Paul's team wrestled with the reality of the diagnosis, weighing the financial implications against the long-term health.
You put on a pair of boxing gloves. That does not mean that you will be perceived as legitimate. It doesn't mean people will be willing to pay to watch you fight. Me personally, I was done with Jake Paul after the pretend fight that he had with Mike Tyson last year. Clearly, I'm not the only one, because viewership for his fight last weekend with Anthony Joshua, it was significantly lower than a real fight between Canelo Alvarez and Terrence Crawford. Make sure to like and subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter at KC_BTL84. Link to the main channels in the description below. There are a lot of allegations right now that the fight between Jake Paul and Anthony Joshua was rigged, or it was supposed to be rigged. According to the conspiracy theories, Jake Paul was supposed to win the fight, but Anthony Joshua decided to knock his ass out anyway. If it was supposed to be rigged, it would not be the first time that a fight in boxing was stained with corruption. But either way, it doesn't matter, because interest in seeing Jake Paul fight is on the decline. His fight last weekend averaged 33 million views on Netflix. Now,
risks, before ultimately accepting what doctors made clear was unavoidable, that continuing could result in permanent damage, a reality that Rogan underscored by reminding listeners that fighters often ignore pain until it's too late, driven by adrenaline, ego, and the promise of legacy. And for Jake Paul, whose career was built on challenging expectations and defying critics, this ending felt particularly cruel, because it was not a knockout loss or a public humiliation that closed the chapter.
Knocking out and breaking Jake Paul's jaw. Just talk to me right now about the fight itself and then we'll break it down.
Bit of a crap fight, if we're all honest. It was like watching Jaws 2 when all the kids went out on their boats and they were in the middle of the sea and the shark was just surrounding the boat, just like that's what it was like. It was just like it was like a shark circling its prey and just like it was like nibbling and eventually got him. But Jake Paul showed big plums in there, no matter what anybody says about him, because I've seen people say, yeah, he went in there to survive. Yeah, okay, he went in there to survive. He's a guy that's been boxing a couple of years against a unified champion of the world who can really punch. Yeah, it wasn't the best fight. It just wasn't the best thing to watch, was it? Like it was just, yeah, it weren't great. I just want to see now Tyson Fury against Anthony Joshua. I think at the stages of their careers they're at, AJ and Tyson Fury, we don't need to see interim fights, Andrew. We don't need to see interim fights because they're just potential banana skins. We want to see two of the best heavyweights of this.
But the quiet authority of medical truth, something even the loudest personality cannot argue with, and Rogan's shock also reflected how rapidly Paul had transitioned from outsider to legitimate part of the boxing conversation, with real camps, real opponents, and real risks, making the injury less of a punchline and more of a wake-up call for fans who may have underestimated the seriousness of his commitment. And as the dust settled, discussions turned to what this means for the future of crossover boxing, with Rogan questioning whether the relentless demand.
Like when you got a fly on the windscreen and you're trying to swat it, and you're trying to swat it and you miss and you keep tapping, and then eventually, bang, you get it. That's exactly what that fight was. Jake Paul didn't get in there to win last night. He got in there to survive. And he didn't do a better job of surviving. He sold the fight brilliantly. That's what he is. He's a salesman. And he's a YouTuber, influencer, call him whatever you want. So from that perspective, he did his job, but he never got in there to win. He just got in there to got beat up. I'm glad Anthony Joshua done a number on him. This is why boxers are boxers, YouTubers, whatever they want to call themselves, influencers, they should stay in their lane and fight people that they're supposed to fight on their level. This guy was never on Anthony Joshua's level, and Joshua did what he needed to do, did what he had to do for the sake of boxing, and blow this guy out and just knock him out.
What about the fact that Jake was able to land on him clean a couple of times? What did you make of that?
Oh, listen, you can't get into the water without getting hit. Fortunately for Joshua, that guy can't break an egg. So he was never in any danger. He's always going to get hit back. I mean, it was 6 rounds. Anthony Joshua was always going to take at least 1 or 2 shots over that 6-round period, but it was nothing to hurt him. It was nothing to bother him. And like I say, this is all about getting AJ's confidence back. Okay. If Jake Paul fights, if he fights KSI or KFC or whatever his name is, then those two are evenly matched, aren't they? They're evenly matched, and then they could fight, and then.
For bigger fights and higher stakes accelerates were on fighters who lack the gradual development typical of traditional careers, suggesting that Jake Paul's injury could become a turning point in how such ventures are approached. And while Paul himself has remained largely silent, sources indicate that the emotional toll has been significant, as the realization sets in that an identity built around fighting, proving doubters wrong, and chasing ever larger moments may have reached its final.
Now, I know it's not easy to fight a guy that's running away from you, and Jake Paul made a ring bigger. It was 22 by 22 as
it's
opposed to
huge ring. When
20.
I was looking at it, I'm like, holy shit, this ring's massive.
I had said before the fight, I tweeted, I said, it was like a soccer field that they were, fighting in, right?
Yeah.
And, it's not easy to do that, but he just looked poor in there and like he didn't really care. And, you're being paid that much money and people are, I looked at tickets today just to see on their ticket map how many tickets were left and what it was like. And there was tickets being sold for $3,500. And then this is the kind of performance, if you're AJ, that you give when you're being paid $35 million and people are paying that much money to get in. I thought that was, the whole show was awful. Netflix ought to be embarrassed for putting that on. But
chapter far sooner than expected, and Rogan closed his reaction with a stark reminder that careers in combat sports often end not with applause, but with doctors' notes and difficult conversations, urging fans to remember the human cost behind the entertainment, and whether Jake Paul ultimately embraces retirement or seeks another path within the fight world. This moment stands as a dramatic full stop on a career that redefined attention, challenged tradition, and ultimately collided with the harsh limits of the sport, leaving Joe Rogan, and the entire boxing community, shocked not by the fall of a controversial figure, but by how unforgiving and final reality can be when the body says no.